Okay, you don't look puzzled, so you didn't listen last week. Spoke about Isaac, but what did I speak about last week? What was the crux of the message of last week? Okay, I shall give you the YouTube link. Okay. The determination, the determined faith. Remember, we spoke about serving God with a determined faith. And I related to Abraham that had to sacrifice Isaac, was called to sacrifice Isaac above the understanding of Abraham from a point of view. How does a sacrifice of a human please God? Amen. Okay, I shall give you the teaching again. It's on the web, and I have to really give honor to and glory to God, because His word is a two-edged sword. Not me, His word. Because I got some comments on the YouTube from last week. It's a whole new way of seeing things. So today I want to continue, not in the same manner, but let's talk a little bit about the determination. And today I actually want to talk a little bit about our understanding of life. So if I ask you, life, what does it mean? It's a lot of people that breathe a lot of oxygen, that waste oxygen sometimes. I don't know. Life. Well, life is having a nice house next to the beach. Or life is having 90 days of leave a year. What is life? What we do see is that life has got many trials. It is not so pleasant. Well, 90% of the time, life is not pleasant. So last week we spoke about determination. Now, determination makes you do things like this ant. It gives you a, what am I doing? So what, with determination, the dictionary says the quality of being determined, firmness of purpose. That is determination. If I know what's the purpose, I can be firm in what I do. And this is why this ant carries this big worm, because he knows that he needs to be determined. This worm is, I don't know, 10 times his size, but he is determined. He's going to get it down to their nest. Why? Because he's got a godly purpose. God has put in his DNA, this is what you shall do. Now you would say it's impossible for an ant like this to have that strength, because he is not built to have that strength. Doesn't matter, because God made him. So it's not what you think, it's how God made it. With that little tiny legs, he carries something far more heavier than himself, because God has put a purpose in him. So we said, well, if that's the case, we have to find a purpose. So we are continuously then asked, because we want this determination, what on earth am I here for? And then life needs purpose. I want to get up in the morning and I want to know that there is a meaning and there is a purpose in life. And that is supposed to give me determination. Amen. So to find purpose then, we have to constantly, so we want this purpose, to find this purpose. So we asking constantly God's plan. God, what are you doing? Amen? Okay, I was just worried there for a moment that I'm the only one. So God, what are you doing? So, and then, if we know what God is going to do, then I can make sense of it. Therefore, I'll have purpose. And when I have purpose, then I will be determined to go through even fire. But if I do not know what's God's plan, then I cannot make sense of it, so I do not find a purpose, therefore I am not quite determined. So how many of you know God's plan? Oops, we have a problem. How do you serve God with determination then? So typically then, what is the next thing that we do is we do this. I cannot understand why this is happening to me, God. I cannot understand that I've been praying so long, and I cannot understand, and that is our prayer most of the time. God, I want to understand. Because if I can understand, I can find purpose. If I can find purpose, then I can find determination to serve God. And last week we said, you do not need determination. God is God. Okay, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about why this is completely lost. Why purpose is lost, why determination is lost, and why are we going through the struggles that we are going through? What is God's purpose? Because you want to understand, so I can tell you now what is God's plan. It's not something that you would want to hear, so you can lock the doors. And how can I tell you? Because in my life I'm going through this. And do you think I ask God, I cannot understand? Do you think I ask that? No. You know, I'm a teacher. If you cut me, there's gold coming out of my arms, not blood. You know, I'm superhuman. No, I'm just a guy that speaks a lot, that learns actually much more than you to be 2 or 3 steps in front of you. But apart from that, you know, I'm going through the same trials, and I've got the same attitudes. God has also made me with my own personality. So I'm battling with that. So we have to then understand God's plan. So where do we start? Now typically we would say, okay, we are serving God. So God has given us His Word, and I'm going to fast for 150 days, land up in a hospital, and you know, be revived from the dead, and then I would know God's plan. So therefore I'll do the following. I will want to put sense in God, in His Word, to make sense. But we do not have to put sense in God or His Word. It is the sense, the essence. Does it make sense to serve God? I don't care about the answer. The fact that you are serving God makes sense. And that is the essence. You see, the thing is, we want to study the Word and say, yeah, I can understand why God has said this, and therefore it makes sense, and therefore I understand, and I'm going through and therefore I have determination. But the first sense is to serve God, because that's the essence. So it is for us to align ourselves in unison with God and His Word, the sense and the essence. So for anything to start making sense, we have to align ourselves first, because then we'll understand. So we do not want to clarify or put the words in order in the Bible. You don't have to do it. It's already in order. God has placed it exactly the way it has. So you don't have to go find another book or another words or saying this. God has given every word in exactly the same order, so you don't have to put anything in order. It's in order. So what's the sense in it? Just believe it, so God. That's the essence. But where have we gone wrong? What is the problem then with man that let's go through the Bible. Think about Israel. And which times, let's talk about the good times. And which good times did they serve God? Give me a couple of examples. Okay, when they're being fed, but they are being fed because they had to be very hungry first. So somehow there is a problem that man today serve God when it is difficult times. Do they serve God when it's good times? Well, you serve God, but not with the same determination. Ask a guy that hasn't eaten for a week to say thanks for the food in front of him, and ask a guy to pray that has just eaten 10 minutes ago for this food. Will you have different prayers? Of course you will. And that's the essence. That God wants the insides to make sense, to be an honor to Him. So therefore we see that even in Judges, God was tough with them. They went through struggles. They suffered. They served God. God gave exactly what they wanted. Now, remember this, because it's going to come. God gave them exactly what they wanted, and then they stopped serving God. Why was that? Is it something that God made us do? He put it in our personality. Then when it's good times, we serve God. But remember, when God gave them what they wanted, they stopped serving God. And we'll see that the Bible actually says that. So the conclusion is that if you really want to serve God with determination, you have to suffer all the time. Doesn't make sense. But the Bible says this. Paul, how did he serve God? When he became blind. When he had to go through tough times. He started seeing the truth. So somewhere, the question is why is suffering then so important? Why is suffering then the essence of man to get man to serve God? The suffering is not the essence, but it is the solution. And we'll look at that. So let's understand first, because God, it's very important. Proverbs 2 tells us, my son. Now if it says my son, it refers to all the men. No, it doesn't. Because he said to Moses, go tell Pharaoh, let my firstborn son go. So he talks about son. He says, my son, if you accept my words and treasure up my commands with you. So if you accept it and you treasure it up. We have a connection with God so that you make your ear attend to wisdom, incline your heart to understanding. So if you connect with me, listen to me and understand. For if you cry for discernment, to see, to distinguish, to discernment, lift up your voice for understanding. So understanding is not going to come, you fall over it. I understand it. You lift up your voice. It is a road to walk to get understanding. Then you would understand the fear of Yahweh and find the knowledge of Elohim. So in this, there is no such thing as I just walk, I fall over it and it happens, or you come to the front, I pray to you and you fall over, or you walk through a bath of water and you get healed and all these things. It's an easy way out. You get to know God. In actual fact, even he says, if you incline your ear to wisdom, if you connect with me, you still have to cry for this understanding. It's work to serve God. So don't think you're going to come and listen to a teaching and then go back home. You have to take this and you have to go work at it. Because when I speak into your heart, and then automatically you start walking the way that I spoke when you go out here. No, you don't. It takes hard work to get this word in you to make you change. Natural fact, few people have, 100% of people have tried that by themselves, and it never worked. Have you tried changing? And then suddenly you cannot change. Okay. Yeah, I'll speak a little bit later about smoking, because I've smoked, so I can do that. I've tried smoking by myself. I tried stop smoking by myself. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. It was a difficult thing. Why is it? Why is it so difficult for a person to change his habits? It says in verse 6, for Yahweh gives wisdom, out of his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. So knowledge and understanding comes from him, through which means suffering. There is no other way to imprint that in man's heart without suffering. Unfortunately, that is the only way. We'll say, Raymond, it's impossible. There is other ways that God, I'll show you now why. Because inherently there is a problem with man. And we'll discuss that. So let's go with the creation. You see there's a little dust head. Firstly, they say it is wondrous. God does wondrous works. Why? How can you take a piece of sand, dust, and then it ends up to be flesh, and it is living? This is so far apart that it's not a miracle. It's wondrously. God has acted wondrously from something. Well, it's not even from something. Because there was a bunch of atheists. They discovered how to make man. They built this big machine, and they took all this dust, and they put it together, and they built this little man, and they were going to put the electrodes in this man, and they're going to switch on the machine, and they're going to make man themselves. And then a voice comes from heaven, and he says, no, 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 just stop. Get your own dust. If you want to make man, then make him from something that you have created. So, before the dust, what was there? There was nothingness. So man was actually then created out of what? Out of nothingness. Not out of sand, out of nothingness. Because then this atheist and all these people, they could have made this man. He says, no, 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 no. Get your own dust. Don't use my dust. Go create your own dust and then make man and then see who's God. So what we see is that creation, every creation out there is from nothing. Creation, now, tell me that is wondrously. God acts wondrously because you live out of nothingness. So creation is from nothingness. And then nothingness becomes life when connected to the Creator. And somehow God has blown His breath into us, and therefore even if we want or not, we are connected to God. Even if we do not serve Him, inherently in us, we are connected to God because we've got His breath in us. So we are connected to God. So this nothingness becomes flesh, becomes a tree, becomes whatever. So you'll say even tar. Well, tar comes from nothingness because it had to come from stones. It had to come from eventually dust, and then dust from nothingness. So nothingness becomes valuable in the hands of the Creator. That is wondrously. So what do we see? When the creation disconnects from the Creator, then what will life want automatically to do? Because remember, God keeps everything. I always imagine God with his hands in creation like this. And if he had to pull his hands away just for a split second, what will happen? Well, what will happen? Everything will return to nothingness. Even dust. He keeps dust in its place. So if God had to take himself out of creation, what will even happen to the dust? Will become nothingness. So therefore, we would think we would die. No, you would just cease to it. You'll become nothingness. So when the creation disconnects from the Creator, then nothingness is there. I think you're going to see where I'm going to go to. We can see this is already something in our life. That each thing wants to return to its original state as dust. If you leave a car for long enough, it will end up as millis. No. Dust. Even an apple will go back to dust. Even a tree will go back to dust. So everything will go back to its original state where God created him out of, and that is dust. And who keeps dust in place? God. There's only one thing, and then you'll understand why there is certain things why God calls it so important. There's only one material on this earth that will never return. I'm going to, for instance, let's take, for instance, metal. I'm going to take a piece of metal. It rusts, it goes back into the ground, it becomes dust, and it goes into the ground, and I take that ground and I melt it again. Well, I have metal again. But there's one material that does, and that is gold. I can take gold, and I can make it so fine and put it in the ground. Does it become dust? But I take this ground and I melt it again. What happens? I get gold. Can you understand why gold is so important in a lot of the things in the tabernacle? Because it's an indestructible material. So God has made gold. So even if dust should disappear, theoretically, I'm talking theoretically, according to my understanding, which is you've seen according to Psalm 139, it is really very limited. My understanding is that dust had to appear, you'll have a bunch of gold in the air hanging like this because it's indestructible. God has specifically made it like that, and then he uses it for himself in his tabernacle. And he refers to, I'll purify you as gold. I'll make you indestructible. So he wants to turn us from a creation of dust into something so pure and fine that even Revelation says when this gold is so pure, it's actually see-through. That's where gold's purity lands up to be see-through. So we see that creation has got inherently something that wants to bring it back to nothingness, because this is where it came from. So there's Philip James Bailey. He says, the course of nature seems like course of death, and nothingness the whole substantial thing. I said, well, I don't know who you are, Mr. James Bailey, and if you serve God or not, but you've got exactly that idea. That the nature seems the course of death. It always wants to return to nothingness. And that this is the whole substantial thing. It's the nothingness. Without God, there's nothing. Peter Wessel, can't pronounce his name. We come from an inconceivable nothingness. So you can't even, because if you say nothingness, nothingness can only have nothingness if there was somethingness. Right? So there can only be something, there can only be nothing if there was something. So even this nothingness is far beyond what we can comprehend. And he says we come from an inconceivable nothingness. We stay a while in something which seems equally inconceivable from dust to where we are, only to vanish again into the inconceivable nothingness. Wow. It's high. You know, I always look at my children, and Hubert will tell me, I did not understand a word that you said today. So I'll try to be slower, but it is important that I explain this. You don't have to understand it right now. You can go look at YouTube or a video or audio, and you can try to understand it. But the fact is that they all testify that nothingness is inconceivable, but we automatically want to return to nothingness. You'll see why it's important. Nothingness is not being nothing, because we said in the beginning that if we said God created something out of nothingness, then there should have been somethingness. So there is no such thing as nothingness. What is there? It's actually, but it's rather being total emptiness. Because with nothing there was something. So it's emptiness. But with emptiness, it needs to be full. But it didn't need to be full. It can always have started with being empty. So emptiness is there is, well, nothing. You know, it's a vicious circle. So nothingness is not being nothing, but rather nothingness being total emptiness. So now I come and I say to you that we've got a connection to God, and as long as we've got a connection to God, okay, we are something. We have purpose. But when we disconnect with God, do we become nothing or do we become empty? So man, the wrestle of man, the war between being nothingness and we now call it emptiness, is the underlying illness of today's century, of this century. The wrestle today of you and me is against the emptiness. And why is there emptiness? Because we did not connect with the Creator. And even if you are connected to the Creator, He is much bigger, and therefore you will never get to a point where I say, well, I'm full. The more you connect with the Creator, the more you realize the size of your emptiness. And you just want to connect more and more and more. Now, how do you get a person to admit that he is empty? Come on, there's an easy answer for that. You don't get people to admit that they are empty. They will not do that. In actual fact, the worst part is, since man has disconnected from the Creator, the century is filled with emptiness. Since man has disconnected from the Creator, the century is filled with emptiness, and therefore drives itself to fill this total emptiness. So now suddenly we find ourselves empty because we are not connected with God. And I'm now even talking about religious people, because you can be connected to God and be completely empty. And therefore you want to fill it with something. Then you go from church to church and you want to fall over, you want to see miracles. You want, because there is an emptiness. So the total drive now of man is to fill this emptiness within himself with something. But you know, where will we start? Not with God. We will finish with God. So we will start first with what we call today entertainment. Because the entertainment fills this emptiness, makes you happy. It gives you purpose. And that's why there's so many, because you jump from the one to the another one, to the other one, to the other one, and you are being entertained all the time for you to feel that I have got purpose, that I'm not empty. But guess what? When you walk out of a movie, what happens? You are back to emptiness. What happens if you've been waiting the whole year, you've been saving for this 2-week holiday, and the first day you start your holiday, you start counting, oh, there's only 9 days left. Oh, there's only 8 days. And the last time you get, there's last days left. And why? Because you are actually counting the time that you are going to be empty again, and you have to wait a whole year to fill this emptiness. And you feel and you see that people every day trying to fill the emptiness in their life with something. So they jump from entertainment into music, because this entertainment, it's not good enough, because it works upon the flesh. Now see where the devil works. It's because where does music work? In the flesh. Does it work into the spirit? So man jumps and he says, I am spiritually, I'm empty, therefore I start listening to very sad songs. I went through a breakup when I was quite still younger, with a girlfriend. I don't know if you still remember the group Air Supply. Okay. So you sit there and you sulk and you listen to Air Supply. It was made because it connects where? On your flesh. It connected. I'm surprised that you know Air Supply. Well, luckily my kids don't know Air Supply, but maybe that's not too bad against today's music. I don't know. But it connected. You can see there was song, love songs. There was all the songs, everything that's in the music industry connects on what? On a physical level. It connects with your spirit. Because after you've gone through all the entertainment and you realize, but this flesh cannot be satisfied. Oh, the emptiness is in the spirit. Then I want to fill it in the spirit. And after you've listened to all the music, you just realize I'm even more empty. Because it lasts for a while, and that's why now young people, not my kids, you see them 24 hours a day with earphones, walking around, listening. Why? Because as long as the music is there, it talks into the spirit. It works on the spirit, because your body, your soul is telling you that I'm empty. You know, the miners in the old days, not that I say music is bad. Anything is good unless it's used wrongly, then it's bad. God created music. So I'm not going to say music is bad. So if you listen 24 hours a day to godly music, even that is bad. Because God did not send music. He gave us His word. So as long as you listen, you do not. If you listen to His word, yes. But somehow you have to have a balance in anything. So what we find is that in the old days, when the miners went into the coal mines, and when they blasted, there was a poisonous gas that you couldn't smell and people would die. So what did they use to detect this poisonous gas? Canaries. Why canary? Because it sings. So you can hear it, it sings and so on, and suddenly there's silence. What happens if there's silence? It dies. Okay, and then they all start running. Your soul is filled with godly joy. And then this joy disappears. Why does it disappear? It's telling you something. There's poison. There's an emptiness. There is something in my soul that doesn't make it sing the way that it used to sing. It's telling us about an emptiness in our lives. So even with music, but now music doesn't do it anymore. So now it becomes drugs, sex, all the things that are so abominable before God. And eventually it's an absolute loss of control. Now, you would think that this emptiness had to be filled with something, and then you would be better off, but filling it with the wrong things will bring you to a point where you're losing control. Now, I'm going to make this, I'm going to talk about cigarettes at this moment. It's a hard one, because tell a guy that smokes to, just put his cigarettes away and stop smoking. Is it that easy? It's not. Why? And you know what? There is not a place that you can sit today without smelling smoke. Did you see the population? If you tell a guy or a person that you are going to die, you will get cancer of this, you are going to die, then what is he going to say? I'm worried. I don't care, because this fills me with something. It fills me with something. Now, when I was still a country manager of a big international company in South Africa, I used to stress a lot. So you drink coffee. So coffee, caffeine, makes you actually stress more. Then you go outside and you go smoke. Smoking, got nicotine in it, makes you stress more. Then I stress and I need a coffee. I go drink a coffee. Then you smoke and your coffee, you smoke. Eventually what happens? You're in a losing control cycle. That is cigarettes. Okay. So what is the solution of getting rid of the addiction to cigarettes? Okay, well, before we go there, let's just carry on, because I'll talk about the addiction now. Psalm 106 verse 14 and 15 says, and it refers to the Israelites, they were eating manna. Manna was from where? Which tree? Which tree? Where did it grow? On which tree did it grow? Manna was from where? It was from God. You want to tell me I'm sick and tired of God's food? I'm sick and tired of God telling me in His Word how I should live. Therefore I shall make my own rules. This is what they said. Is we are sick and tired of this wondrously food that you are giving to us. We want meat. We want an empty. We find that we have got a hunger, we've got an emptiness, and we want it filled, but not with God's food, with something else. So Psalm 106 verse 114 and 15 says, they greedily lusted in the wilderness, and they tried El in the desert. And He, Yahweh, gave them their request. He said, okay, there is your request. But the psalmist tells us something. But sent leanness, razon, within their being. Now, if you go read the Jewish Bible, it says a leanness in their soul. Because if it talks about the being, it talks about the nefesh. Not the flesh, the nefesh, the soul. He gave them the heart's desire, but in turn has given them a leanness in their soul. And guess what? Where did they land up? In God's wrath. So razon means leanness, the wasting, the scantness. So it's basically, you will get by filling your emptiness other than with God's appointed source for you, His food, it will become a wasteness, because He says that He gives it to you in your soul, so that you will get to a point where it is absolutely wasteness. You will waste your life. So you have all heard about alcohol. The AA, Alcoholic Anonymous. Okay? I'm going to talk about some of their things that is actually pertaining to all of us. But they say alcohol is the ultimate remover, the best remover. It removes stains, it removes your house, your car, your job, your wife, your children. It removes everything. Best remover you can get. That is alcohol. But is alcohol the problem? Well, because so we get to a point where this wasting, this wasteness, this leanness, this emptiness drives a person, and now we say, you see, he's a drug addict and he's an addict, because we don't want to see that we have a different emptiness in us. Theirs are just really obvious, and that's why they're using drugs. So it leads to an absolute destruction. And again, why is this person in this state? Because of the disconnect with God. Now, you can connect with God, but connecting with His Word, connecting with God with emunah, with faith, is like food. It lasts for a day, and then you have to connect again, and then you have to connect again. So connecting with God is something like food. You just don't connect with God. I accept the Savior of my life, and then I go live because I'm saved. In actual fact, it's just a downward spiral. Connecting with God is food. You have to connect with Him every day. In actual fact, if we should look at the sacrifices, 3 times a day. You don't pray once a week and think that you are going to connect with God. Well, it's going to help. If you're not praying at all and you start praying once a week, it's a start. It's a start. But the more you want to fill your emptiness, the more you have to connect to the Creator. And you cannot fill it with something else, because if you fill it with something else except what God has ordained, now He's given us everything that He said, this is enough to fill your emptiness. All you need to do is study it. So you have to make time. So I have to somehow cut something out of my life to make time in order to connect with God. So the worst part of self-destruction is that you are fully aware of it, but there's nothing you can do to stop it. Tell that to a smoker. Tell it to me when I was smoking. It's going to give cancer. I say, yeah, no, I realize it. That's why I go in and I ask, can I have the packet of cigarette that says breast cancer? I want that one. Because I can't get breast cancer. That is the audacity that I have, the wasteness that I had in me because I allowed this in my life. Now, as long as that portion of your soul has been occupied, it's a place that God does not occupy. And therefore it will create an emptiness. You think it's a place that it fills. It's a place that it occupies as emptiness. So the more things you have in your life that is actually empty, the less God can fill that. So you are connected to God, but you are only connected to God quarter of the times because the rest of your soul is filled with things that seems to count for something, but it's actually emptiness. And I'm talking from anything that you think of. People that keeps on studying. They keep themselves busy with study. They are 10 doctorals further, and they study. Why? Because they want to keep their minds busy, not to realize there's an emptiness. If you want to study the Bible. No, I can't study the Bible. I'll go do veterinary, and then I'll go medicine, and then I'll go electronics, and they start studying, and you go, what? And they think that's a purpose in their life. It's to study, to get knowledge. So every time, and that's why I say, is it a problem, this or that, and cigarettes and so on? It's about, if you have something that occupies your soul, it occupies and gives you emptiness. And the more you have of that, Even if you are connected to God, you will realize you've got an emptiness. But the worst part is you know that. I'm not saying something new to you today. You know that. The worst part about the self-destruction is that you are fully aware of it. But there's nothing you can do to stop it. And we call that the vicious circle. It says, look out, it's a vicious circle that we are in. Okay, you are very serious. Okay, so this man looks, can I explain this to you? You are very serious. Okay, it's a serious teaching. It's a serious teaching. But there is an empty, this is circle, a vicious circle. And you know what? Because we see it again and again and again. How can I tell you that this term vicious circle or this circle is absolute satanic? It is satanic. Why? Because look at this. It tells you that within this, you eating your own tail. You cannot survive by eating your own flesh. That's what it's saying. And in between is, it's the work of the enemy. I want to fill myself by injecting myself with drugs. So I'm killing myself to live. That's what it is. But tell the person that, he says, well, you know, I don't care. Because when the drugs wear off, I realize something. Emptiness. And now emptiness is in many forms, because with emptiness you have no purpose, you have no determination, you have no vision. You have nothing to live for with an emptiness. And the greater this emptiness becomes, the less you want to be in the reality. And therefore, you go look at Days of Our Lives and you wish that your life was like theirs. And Hollywood, they coin this because they can give you exactly what you desire, because you cannot get there. So you sit and you fill emptiness with emptiness, and therefore the emptiness becomes greater and greater and greater. So the end result becomes addiction, actually. So if I had to ask you so let's say any filling this emptiness, any sort of filling for this emptiness, which is actually a cry for a connection to God. So your soul is crying, saying, you need to connect to God. Why? Because the breath of God is within you. He's the one who gives you life. So it doesn't matter. It's going to call, it's going to say, you have to connect back to Him. Otherwise, automatically you are going back to nothingness, to emptiness. And the soul does not want to be empty. It's a temporary, not fulfilling need to be constantly taken again and again. So now you find a lot of things in life. So if I ask you who's an addict, you would say it's a guy that smokes, it's a guy that drinks alcohol, it's a guy that takes drugs, or a person, or... No, can I tell you one thing? An addict is 90% of the population today. Because addiction is now in many, many forms. Addiction is with the eyes, addiction is with the ears, addiction is with the mouth. Obesity it's a problem. It's a problem. Well, remember, all these things are not the problem. Your heart starts paining. You say, give me a tablet so that I can take this pain away. Is that the problem? The pain? What is the problem? There's something wrong with your heart. Probably the arteries in your heart. So if you want to fix it, what do? Take a grandpa? No. Fix the arteries in your heart. Because these are just symptoms of what is inherently wrong. Now, all these things that we are looking at today is inherently the symptoms of what is the real problem, is that people are godless. And even people that are religious are also sometimes godless. And even people that serving God are sometimes even serving Him on their terms, and therefore are at least part godless. That's why God says, well, there's only one thing that I ask you to do, is serve me with, just say to me again, with what? With your whole heart, and with your whole being, and with all your strength. So serving God is how much? 100%. If not, you have emptiness. And that emptiness you'll try to fill with something that is going to create more emptiness. And before you find it, you are, instead of connecting to God. That's why people that serving God for 30 years, just let some things in their lives and let it go on for 10 years, will they be better or worse off? I don't see people go preaching in the pubs, go evangelize in the pubs. Because if they do it every night, every Monday night, a year from now, they'll be drinking. Why? Because somehow, the biggest problem today is that we have so many emptiness, but we want to evangelize to an empty person. And eventually we connect on the emptiness, and he draws me down instead of me drawing him up. That's why nobody comes unto the Father if He does not draw him. Because it's the connection. It's the person, the connection. His soul is telling him that he wants to, and he needs to connect to God. And you are just a tool then to provide this connection. So the fact that we can then say that 90% of today's population is addicts, and this even includes people in the church, people in synagogues, people in the Catholic Church, people that seems to be very religious, they are addicts. Addicts to various forms of things. And it starts from the worst things, pornography, to child molesting, to things that should not be. But the emptiness and this destruction is so far. Now I'm saying, well, if 90% of the population is addicts, and you and me, we say, okay, in some sort of form is an addict, what is the solution to an addict? What's the solution to an addict? Lock him in a room and don't give him the substance. No, that's substance dependence. That's not addict. Because why is he taking the substance? Because of a problem. The problem must be spiritual. So we put him in church. And then he starts drinking and doing drugs in church. Why? Because religion does not fill. Religion does not fill emptiness. So what is the problem, and where is the emptiness? It's on a spiritual level. God is spirit. So you need to connect Him on a spiritual level. Now guess what? There's 12 steps in the AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and one of the things that they say, well, the success of coming out of addiction is a spiritual connection with God. Now, their gods have many names, but they have seen that even if you think that you've seen an angel and it's a spiritual encounter, it stops. Why? Because it fills this emptiness. Now, unfortunately, along the way the road, they come back into their normal, because it's not a real connection to the God that created them. You can connect to a God. That's idolatry. But you know what? It will still not fill that emptiness, because all it will happen is that the nothingness will start kicking in. Only when you realize that you are nothing and you put it in God's hands, wondrous acts starts happening. You become life. Things start changing. This is when addicts start changing. So how do you get an addict to go through this process? Suffering. Suffering. No matter who you are, what you are, if you decide I'm going to walk this road, there is suffering in front of you today. And suffering is the only way to remove this thing's emptiness. Now remember, you are serving God, but there is a portion that is still withholding in your soul, the emptiness. God says, well, you touch my heart. You serve me 80% of the time. You touch, when you pray, I listen to you, and therefore I'm going to help you remove the extra 20% of emptiness. How do you remove this emptiness, this addiction? By giving tablets? By taking things away from you that you crave. And therefore I can say this, what I say today is that God has put me in a place, in a matter of 12 months where I've never been, and I've been doing exactly the same things for years and years in business terms. I'm struggling in the business and so on. Why? Because I'm a bad business guy, or because of circumstances, because of the exchange rate, because of this, because of that. Because God has ordained the suffering to be the one that will remove the emptiness. How many people has come out of suffering and said, while I was there, I did not see it. But now, looking back, God, okay, you have both sides. That after suffering is actually worse off because they did not fill the purpose that God had with the suffering with God. They filled it with something else. So God says, guess what? I see that you are an assembly that wants to serve me with your whole being, but I know each one of you. And Psalm 139, he says, I test your heart when? He says, I test it at night. When you go to sleep, and that's why the modeh ani lefanecha, blessing is there. Blessed are you, Adonai, who has returned my soul in me with mercy. Great is your faithfulness. Because he somehow takes the soul at night and he looks at it and he says, I'm looking at this clay and I need to work on it. And I can see the emptiness in it. And I can understand that, well, I can't do it all at once because it's going to be quite a lot of suffering. And therefore, I will do it bit by bit. Let's start from Genesis. Look at all the things that God achieved through Genesis. Give me an example. Let's go Genesis 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Abraham. Abraham went through suffering. Joseph went through suffering. Moses went through suffering. Elijah went through suffering. Look at all these people. Did they achieve something for God? Would they have achieved it without the suffering? Look, God says, this is my way. Because the suffering, we want to put something negative to it. But God says it's not suffering. It is my fire that is hot, that gives light. Now, if I want to take the heat out of this fire, how does it maintain the light? Guess what? If you want to be the light, you are going to be constantly in heat. And therefore, do not lean onto your own understanding. If you are always going to be in a hot water, I think you should get some serious help immediately. Let's call him the creator of the universe. Because even if you are in the valley of death, that would not even be nothing for you. I look up to the heavens, Psalm 121. Where shall my help come from? My help is from the one that created heavens and the earth. So, if you're going to serve God and it's going to be hot all the time, then start leaning on God and not on your own understanding. If God's first reaction was not to say to Adam and Eve, Eve, what did you do? And Adam, what did you do? Because he knew that so he didn't go and shout at them because he realized something in the spirit realm. The connection to him was immediately cut. He knew it. And he went, Adam, what did you do? Eve, what did you do? No. He came very quietly and he said, Adam, Eve, where are you? So that they can realize, well, I'm at a place that I shouldn't be. They could have turned around and said, I'm hiding because I've sinned against you. It might have had a different reaction with God, a different outcome. We don't know. But he responded with a question, where are you, giving the opportunity for returning? But they did not. They did not recognize this. So all God is doing with the soul that is crying with the emptiness is just saying, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? What have you given up this week to the emptiness? You see, barely nothing, because we don't want to deliberately make ourselves suffer, and therefore we don't want to stop doing the things. God says, well, I really know in deep down that you want in your spirit, you want to achieve this, but you are too scared to put yourself into suffering, so I'll do it for you. Don't worry, I'll give you everything that you require. I'll be with you. I will carry you during the suffering. But guess what? When you are on the other side, you will be more full of me than empty. Because this is the whole purpose. And therefore, only when we stop wrestling against suffering will we get purpose. Will we get determined faith to serve God. But as long as you wrestle against suffering, you are not going to get there. Raymond, you are off the mark altogether. You do not know what you're talking about. It isn't until you come to a spiritual understanding of who you are, nothingness, that you can begin to take control of yourself. The fact that you know that you are nothing, how do you control that? Well, you don't. As you learn to control yourself, you will get control of your life. If you want to move the world, you first have to move yourself. So the first step for an addict is to take the first step and say, I recognize the emptiness. I don't recognize the symptom. I recognize I'm an alcoholic. That's a symptom. I recognize that I have a problem. And it is much deeper than the symptom. And therefore the first step now is, towards getting clean. That's a hard road. How can I say this is biblical? Because you and me were saved by what? Addiction is the only prison where the locks are inside. And specifically around the head. It's the only prison that you hold to yourself. How can I say this is biblical? Because God knows the suffering was just for you. That the Messiah, Yeshua, the salvation came through. Came through. There's no other way that He redeemed His people. It was through suffering. If that's not God's purpose, then then look, I'm open to suggestions and always to. This one rabbi said that there was on a number plate, I know it all. But it was spelled I-N-O, it all. So you always get to a point is if I know it all, I-N-O, I do not know it all. It's not about, and this is how the Jewish or the rabbis study. They first study and saying, okay, what is written there? And then the second level is what is not written there. What is not written? Why is not something being written? So if we have to see, why did Yeshua not bring salvation through anything else than this harsh suffering? Why wasn't the Torah maintained through Jewish people's lot of suffering? Because that's God's way. It's God's way. Our suffering is not caused by whatever is happening to us. It is caused by the thought that whatever is happening to us is not supposed to be happening to us. That's why we suffer. God, how can this happen to me? I'm such a good guy. Oh, did you look in the mirror recently? Don't think that it's not supposed to be for you. This person across the road, he's supposed to suffer like this. No. It was intended for you. So that is the suffering. Our suffering is not caused by whatever is happening to us. It is caused by the thought that whatever is happening to us is not supposed to be happening to us. Father, it cannot happen to me. How many people drive fast on the road and they look at the accident and they say, it won't happen to me. Who has ever said that? All of us have said, will never happen to me. People that get sick, it won't happen to me because I cycle, I do a lot of things. Will never happen to me, and the next moment, it happens to him. And then he is completely shocked. So all you have to do is saying, God, I know that anything can happen to me at any time. I am not this wonderful, this great person. I have a lot of emptiness, and therefore I recognize that there are symptoms in my life, and now it's for you to go recognize the symptoms in your life. Because God is putting people in your life that aggravate you. Why? Because it's God's way of putting a symptom in your life to tell you, come on, it's time to give. It's time to give up. Sometimes you give, but sometimes God says, okay, you've been running a while, now it's time to give up. Give up. Release. Give up. So even if you're unsaved, God says, come, give me your life. And if you're saved, he comes and he says, okay, give me more. So this guy, he complains and he says, my God, I have just lost. He's complaining. I can't remember the story, but he's driving his car and he's complaining, God, why is this happening to us and to me and so on. But God says, well, I can take you out of this situation like this. I can redeem, I can salvage your situation immediately. How much money do you have? He said, I've got $50. It's the only money I have. God says, well, okay, I'll take the $50. He says, but God, if I give you the $50, how would I put petrol in this car? Oh, petrol, and you have a car. Okay, I'll take the $50 and the car. But God, if I don't have a car, I'm not going to get to work. Oh, you have work. I'll take the $50, the car, and your work. But God, if I don't have work, how am I going to feed my wife and my kids? Oh, you have a $50, a car, a work, and a wife. Yeah, but where will I stay? And a house. Okay, I'll take everything. You want to be redeemed? I'll take everything. Are you prepared to give everything? The cost of serving God. Did you calculate it? Because God does not want $50. Does not want a car. Doesn't want a job. He wants everything. And when this person sat and he looked at this and he says, well, there's no ways out. I'll give him everything, then God gives it back, and he says, okay, remember, it's mine. It is mine. I'll give it back to you. You are now putting into a place of being a steward of my things. My $50, my car, my job, my house, my wife, my family. And you can look after them. It's not easy serving God. Don't be mistaken by religion and by being spiritual. Religion brings nothing. Spiritual gives, and it fills you with God. Psalm 119, David of all men, David after God's own heart says, before I was afflicted, I myself was going astray. But now I have guarded your word. Verse 71 says, it was good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn your laws. David said this. Was David a good guy or not a good guy? Well, he was a guy after God's own heart. And he even realized, suffering, it was good for me. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. Not emptiness. You are steadfast in what God has made you. James 1, verse 2 and 3. Let us stand. Shabbat Shalom. I want us to come to the front. And I want you to come and take a cup of this grape juice and a bread. And I've specifically left